Hello and welcome to the Berkcast, the How to Train a Dragon podcast. I'm your host HC, and with me are
Rush 2112.
And Wolf.
and my squeaking chair. But anyway, welcome again to another fan fiction reading, and this time the long overdue reading of Wolf's fan fiction, The Dragon Root. So Wolf,
Woo.
te- tell us about it before we start.
It's very short. And actually, as a small topic that we can do after reading this, I thought about asking, kind of looking at how each of us write and how it's a little bit different, But we can get to that a bit later. And there's a few things I want to say about that for me personally. But a small side story that I'll ask you also about after we finish reading. This story had to be rewritten basically from scratch almost. And then the moral of this side story, ladies and gentlemen, is always back things up. Always. My hard drive that I originally had it saved on died, and unfortunately, after trying and failing multiple times to get anything back off of it, I had to basically write most of this from scratch again. So at one point in time, this story had a different ending from what you'll hear now. And so I kind of have the general gist of that original ending in my head still. So I'm going to ask you about that ending and see which one you guys might prefer. I think that'll be kind of interesting too.
Okay, so shall we begin?
I
Up
guess
to you.
Yeah. And by the way, if you want to read along with us, a link to the story will be posted in the video description. And yeah, so Wolf, since you're the one who wrote it, you get to start. And it will be Wolf and Rush. You want to be second?
Sure.
Okay, so it's Wolf, Rush, me.
We'll go
Going line by line?
Yeah.
All right.
Forget
Yeah,
sentences.
line by line. And do you guys want to do the voices or?
It's just Hiccup and Fish Legs, and I cannot do either of their voices.
Well,
I
so
assure you.
let's just let Rush read the entire thing.
Yeah, there we go. Go ahead, Rush. Have fun. We'll
Alright.
just sit and listen.
But yeah, let's just read let's just read the lines. If Rush lands on one of the lines, he can do the voices.
How about this?
and
Yeah,
maybe
I'll just do all the voices. You guys will all actually no, that's kind of confusing.
That's still most of the story.
That's true. But still, it's like,
Okay.
let's switch off between just reading the other stuff.
We'll just go line
Okay.
by line.
Yeah, just go line by
Yeah,
line.
line by line. Okay, so
For those who won't, I will upload the story to the Tumblr since it's fairly short. So when the video is on YouTube, if you're not watching it live, you can follow along if you want.
Yep.
Since it's short enough. So there you go. Or just read it yourself and not bother messing with any of us because we're terrible. I know.
Speak for yourself.
Well, gee, when you put it like that. Anyway, so let's do this. The Dragon Root.
All right. Hiccup moaned as he heard metal clap against rock for what sounded like the millionth time.
Fish Legs, did you really need to take me this far out of the way just to talk to me?
Yes, and you'll see why when we get there. Besides, when did our chief get so impatient? Fishlegs said, smiling.
Hiccup laughed. I asked cause the flight to this cave was already fairly long, and now here we are walking through it without our dragons.
For a good reason, Fish Legs said heavily. I also figured you wouldn't mind getting away from the village for a bit.
Hiccup sighed. You're not wrong here. You're not wrong there, sorry. Whatever. Same thing.
Well then, we're here, Fishlake said, stepping out into an open, almost rounded room with beams of light shooting down through different holes in the ceiling.
Wow, Hiccup breathed. A whispering death nest. That explains why you didn't want the dragons to come along.
One of the reasons, Fishlook said, sitting down against the cave wall.
Hiccup nodded, sitting down as well. Is this what you wanted to talk with me about? He prodded.
Fish Legs chuckled. No, I'm sure we've seen enough, or I'm sure we've both seen enough whispering death tunnels and nests to last a lifetime. He took a heavy breath, turning towards Hiccup, looking much more somber than he had a moment ago. I'm sure you've noticed.
Noticed what? You're going to have to be more specific, Fish.
The dragons and their groups getting smaller.
Hiccup sighed heavily. Yeah, I've noticed. What does that have to do with bringing me all the way out here?
Well, you do remember the dragon roots, yeah?
Yeah, but it's been years since we've seen or found one. Since Snarlout rounded them all up and turned them into mead. Hiccup laughed. Not like anyone was able to afford the price he wanted for it. Still, I can't say it was one of his worst ideas.
Well, there's still one left. And it's here, isn't it? Hiccup asked, knowing the answer before he got it.
Fishlegs gestured to a darker corner on the other side of the cave, where Hiccup was just about able to make out what looked like a door. Hiccup got up, walking over to it, Fishlegs trailing behind him. As he got closer, he could see a dull shine coming from the door itself, as little bits of light managed to hit it. He could also make out the different images carved into it.
Carved
Into it.
This is Gronkle iron. Hiccup trailed off, lost in the detail on the metal and who might have made it.
Hiccup, Fishleg said lightly. This is why I brought you here. I think we might be able to use the dragon root.
Hiccup shook his head, getting his focus back to Fishlegs. Use the dragon root how exactly?
To maybe keep the dragons on Berk, or to maybe somehow use it to find where they're heading off to, so...
What would we do when we found them? Or what would we do to keep them on Berk? Hiccup had started to raise his voice. You know what the root does. It wouldn't be right, no matter how much we may dislike them disappearing.
But Hiccup, aren't you worried? What if this time they don't come back?
He sighed heavily. Fish, I get your worry. I do. I'm none too thrilled about their dwindling numbers either, but there's still much we don't know about them, and even now, after all these years, and we can't just start chasing after them again either, no matter how much I might want to.
Fishleg sighed. You're ever your father's son.
Hiccup laughed. Quoting Gaber again, are we? Yeah, I thought about it as well, to be honest.
Once your mind's made up.
It's made up, they both laughed. Fishleg took a deep breath. The wait and see approach it is, the wait and see approach it is then, I suppose.
Fishleg shook his head, bringing himself out of the memory. He took a look around the room, surrounded by books on dragons and herbs and papers filled with notes on them all. How long did we wait? Hiccup? 10, 15 years. It never did get better, just slowly smaller and smaller their numbers got. Now the skies are almost empty. But you wouldn't know about now, would you? His eyes started to blur. I can't wait any longer, Hiccup. I have to know. Why have to find out? People need to know. Right. The Book of Dragons has to have one last entry.
How the dragons disappeared.
The
end.
The end.
A very short story.
Yeah, very short, but you know,
Tragic.
the ending does leave an impact. I'll say that.
What do you mean? It's nothing. Tears.
I'm not crying. I'm not crying.
Well, that's one way to look at it.
This was written originally this was written before the second movie came out, and this was written again like before Race to the Edge as well. So now everything we know about the dragon root is very different compared to what we know now. And there's an idea for a second story that I've actually been writing and haven't finished yet because I'm terrible and slow, but that kind of goes into a little bit of my own kind of canon, I guess you would say, about the dragon root and how I think it's vastly different from what it is in the show, and in my opinion, way more enjoyable because of it. But, you know, if people are interested, I'll release that one on the Tumblr too at some point. Let me know. But the original story I had for this, or the original ending I had for this, was originally a much lighter tone, and Fishlegs being more accepting of it all. So which one would you have preferred? this one, or a fish likes who kind of accepts it and doesn't want to have an answer?
You know, it's one of those questions that it would have been isn't easier to answer if you had the other version written so that I could. I'm not saying this as a criticism. I'm saying this as,
no, I get it.
Like because I need to imagine it. I
Yeah.
can't, and I can compare a story that was written into a concept, but this one worked fine enough as it is. So
It's a lot shorter compared to the stories we've written and read from you and Rush, right?
yeah.
And
Well,
me-
me, it's not even a comparison, and I'm saying this not to credit myself. I'm saying this because I discredit myself a lot of times, and yeah.
But for me, like the reason this is so short for me is because I think if I tried to write a much longer story, I would not do as well at it, right? Like it would be terrible comparatively. And that's because I feel like I would lose focus fairly quickly.
Also,
That's
on something like
that's
this,
why.
just real quick, like I mean, you could either there's honestly I see the dragons how the dragons disappeared as two ways: a short concept story like this, where it's like a one shot and it's this written pretty much this is like kind of the exact ideal way I'd have a short story of this caliber written, or a super long drawn out one. Like there's really no in between, like 10 chapter one. Like it's either gonna be 25 chapters or one, where it's just basically a conversation and then like that's all a flashback. And I think it's it was a really good idea, really well written.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
It reminds me, one of my fanfictions was actually trying to do the How to Train Dragon 3 supposed ending with the dragons leaving. But even though I didn't really give a reason, like, the reason wasn't the main point of the story, so I just came up with the reason. I didn't really think what that reason was.
Well, in this one, we never got there were dragons when I was a boy line because Hiccup's dead if you didn't get it.
You know what? I didn't get it. Whoa. Earth shattering.
Yeah, that one was also actually, if I'm not, that one was in the original ending that I had. Again, it was a somewhat lighter tone, more accepting from Fish Legs. This one I decided to go a bit more darker with, a little bit darker, quote unquote darker. But I also decided to kind of have Fish Legs be a little bit more of that obsessive person I think he is when it comes to the dragons. And I think, if he thought, if Meatlug was one of those dragons who disappeared or potentially wanted to go away, but he was keeping there, I felt, why would he not want to be kind of more obsessive about it, right? More wanting to know that answer and those reasons why. So I thought that made more sense for his character.
Also, Rush, I can't see you, but I can see your smile. No, we're not opening that door again.
What door? I'm sorry, I was rereading the story just for just to look for where basically it was.
He talked about Fish Legs being sad about Meatlug leaving him and stuff. So we are not opening that door again.
Yeah, it's always hard when a mother leaves his child, I guess.
Yeah.
I also sequel bait in this one very hard, and we'll probably never write a sequel either if anyone's curious.
Yeah, I don't know. You really could. I mean, you could probably add a different perspective.
Yeah, you definitely could, right? Yeah, I definitely could.
I don't know. But...
And you could definitely take it further. Or anyone could really take it further and kind of say, all right, here's an adventure from Fish Legs, going through all this, right? Like an older Fish Legs journeying to try and find where the dragons went. Like you could definitely do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the one to do so, but it's definitely possible.
Hey, fanfiction writers who are listening to this, go ahead, tell us show us what you got.
Or tell me how terrible I am.
Exactly.
Well, don't do that. But yeah, this is an interesting idea which could be explored. Based on the last season of Race to the Edge, the idea of the Heather and Dagger spin-off looking for Oswald was kind of dead. But hey, that's good. That could be a good idea for a spin-off.
Yeah, really.
Not necessarily as a show, but as a story in this world. I would read it.
Yeah.
Read it, watch it, whatever. Anyway, Wolf, you wanted to ask something else about how we write fan fictions after we finish this?
I kind of brought it up a bit. Like, how do you come? I guess this is a question for our listeners too. Like, looking at having listened to one of each of our fan fictions, right? Like, what do you guys prefer more? Do you prefer these more like really focused short stories? Are you good at writing focused short stories, or do you like the more kind of longer and a bit more detailed stories?
I honestly, it depends on what mood I'm in. Most of the time, I'll prefer the detailed stories because I like something that'll take my time. I'm looking for a distraction, unless it's like a collection of one shots. Maybe that's fine too. But I prefer more focus because, as you say commonly about Race to the Edge, you enjoy the world building, and I enjoy it a lot as well. And we went over that, like my favorite tetralogy, even I guess you could even call it a quintology, is the Champion series, where it's just the most massive world building I have seen in fanfiction go, and absolutely amazing. And I was really into that one. So
personally, it's dependent on my mood and what the story is trying to do.
Yeah.
Because that's how I take this. The parodific I did, the first one we ever read, the joke would have lost its appeal if it went on for even one more chapter. The entire idea is that it's a short story. It's a short story. It begins. There are laughs. It ends. It doesn't need to go on for more than that. But then there's, let's say, the Valka one shot that I did. This could have been like a multi-chaptered story, but the problem was I already wrote something multi-chapter and related to How to Train a Dragon before it, so I just want to do something shorter. But it depends on the idea. It depends on what you can do with it. But mostly when I'm bored, I mostly go back to one shots because it's a bit more. I can read it in about half an hour and then I can move on with my life.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Absolutely. And here's something that now that we're asking questions about fanfictions, on mine, and just my writing in general, and as Wolf said, just for this one shot only though, mine is more dialogue heavy because I'm not I'm a computer scientist, not very good at describing things. If you ever ask me to tutor you in a subject, I'm a great teacher because I know stuff, but I'm a horrible teacher because I sometimes, like, my explanations are like the way I'm talking now. They're very disjointed because I'm thinking it's like, what are ways I could do this? I get distracted easily when I'm like, there's also another way you could do this. So most of my stuff is dialogue heavy because I kind of see everything as a TV episode, honestly, when I write. So that's why
I know what you mean.
I'll only use like scenery once or twice, and it's like usually at the beginning or end when they're trying to show something. And so but that's just, and I like the way I write. I mean, some people say, oh, I wish I wrote better like this and this, but I like the dialogue because it's easier to read, in my opinion. It's just annoying when I run out of ways to say said, right?
Oh yeah, dude, trust me, I know.
But with dialogue too, you get to have all the best jokes in the world, and you can actually write the characters like they have been written. You don't have to. I feel like I can keep most characters in character by keeping their dialogue similar, so I don't have to have their actions speak.
Actually, one thing I do about this when whenever I write a character, I'm trying to imagine reading that line with the character's voice in my head, and
Yeah.
so, sometimes if I can't read it with this character's voice, I'm like, okay, then it probably doesn't work. I need to try something else. And
Yeah.
and
For me,
I
it's
had something. Actually, go ahead, Wolf. I'll get to it later.
for me, it's a little bit different, right? Like, I enjoy more, again, like I really enjoy world building, so setting up a scene for me is really important. And now, granted, with this short story, it's so short that the dialogue takes up probably the majority of it. There's not a lot of scene building necessarily, but it is there. I do try to have it, but I kind of try to focus on giving you enough detail to set up a scene, but then letting you kind of run with it yourself, if you will, and try to fill in what I don't say or what I don't have there, because I feel like, all right, I don't need to have this in. I don't need to be explicitly detailed, because I feel like you could kind of get where, kind of where they're at and what they're looking at and how it would look in your head by the detail I've given, right? So I personally enjoy more of that scene building and setting up that scene and kind of making you feel like, all right, this is where I'm at. This is where these characters at. I'm in that place now. So if I can go without dialogue, I'll try to here and there. But again, I'm also someone who really enjoys character interactions, but I don't think I'm someone who could write a large cast of characters. That's why even the story that I've been writing here recently, right? Like, it's still just 2 characters. Like, there's not multiple characters. It still focuses on those 2 characters.
Really, that's another thing with fanfictions. Not necessarily How to Train Your Dragon, any kind of fanfictions where you're involving yourself with the community, and sometimes the fans want you to put a character in there that you had no planning to you didn't plan on using it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of just because that character exists doesn't mean he or she has a place in that specific plot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had that problem a few times, but one thing I did want to say regarding to something Rush said, where he's trying to write it as if it was an episode of a TV show. That's actually interesting, because the point when I started writing fanfictions, aside from the fact it was my old job, which I had a lot of free time on, was also that I said, well, if I'm going to go to film school, there will probably be a writing class. I want to practice on something. So, just to get a basic idea on how to write and basic feedback on, twists or characters and stuff. It's a good way to get yourself familiar with writing, I say.
Yeah.
So I wrote like I saw other people writing their own fanfictions, and I kind of developed my own way, like whatever worked I wrote. And then when I got to my first writing class, I wrote it as I wrote any other fanfiction. And then the teacher told me, well, it's good, but you wrote it more like a book, not like a script, because a script is very, very, very rough. And it works in a complete, let's take this for example. It starts with Hiccup mode as he held Metal Clap against a rock for what's a script will be like Hiccup and Fishlegs are walking through a cave, and then you say Hiccup dialogue, Fishlegs, did you really need and yada yada yada. Like a script, like in a script you don't really write all the detail that you write in a book.
Mm-hmm.
And some people do. And some people don't really get it, like that. In a book, you can say, "This guy looked into her eyes and saw the sorrow within her." You can't really film it in a movie or a show or something.
You can film the scene, but you really don't get that. Like, I mean, unless they're a really great actor or something. But like you just get 2 actors staring at each other, right? And then one has an expression on his face. So yeah, I mean. maybe, and then that's why you don't have like in a script you don't have the characters doing something, but you can have like in the background something's happening. Like for, of course, it's also up to the director to do like, oh, what, let's put this
Yeah,
in the background for
usually,
symbolism, right? Because in the
yeah,
book,
usually,
saying certain symbolism sometimes doesn't work as well as real life.
yeah, usually with standbys in a movie, the director can, unless the director works like me, you usually tell the standbys what to do on set. You don't really have this in the script. Again, and that's the case if you're me.
So
I'm
is
not
that
sure.
the same way for a question? Is that the same way for scenery too? Like, like looking at this story for an example, like I detail out like them walking into the area and kind of saying like different holes signing down through the ceiling, right? Like, how would that be the same amount of detail you'd get from a script, or would there be less detail?
Usually the location, because every scene in a script starts with like, let's say scene one, you say like inside like let's say a rock cave and the time of the day, like morning, afternoon, evening, stuff like that. So you say a cave, but then like usually a cave you don't really take the actors to a cave. You probably get your visual effects supervisor to build a cave for you and use a green screen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's probably either his job or the director's job to design the cave and what they want to achieve.
So generally a script doesn't really detail out the scene a lot, so it gives the director and
And
the people behind that a lot
you
more
know,
creativity.
I think, don't quote me on that, but if the writer and the director are the same person, then maybe he can put a bit more detail in there, because because when he gives the effect supervisor the script, the effect supervisor knows what he's aiming for.
Well, there's also
But
you can
again,
also say sometimes like, um, it doesn't matter if they worked on the script or not, because the directors, I'm pretty sure, always work with the storyboarding. So they see what's going on and
yeah,
then they can
but
make changes there, and that's sometimes the more
keep in
important
mind though,
for
keep in
movies.
mind though, what are we talking about though? Are we talking about an animated movie or a live action movie? Because live action movies don't always have storyboards.
Storyboards, yeah,
Storyboard.
that's true. I'm thinking more of the. I was thinking more of Dean DuBois because in terms
Unless
of
you know
animated movies.
what, yeah, but in like live action films that require a lot of visual effects, like Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, then you have
Yeah,
storyboards.
exactly.
Okay. So that's definitely, if you're someone who, even if you're not someone who knows like the difference between movie storytelling and book storytelling, you can, I think, your explanation there really exemplifies kind of the difference in how you tell a movie story and how you tell a book story, right? Like movies are very visually based, and that really kind of exemplifies that. Where books, they're very descriptive. A book you can, or a story, fan fiction, whatever have you, the more descriptive you are, generally, at times, the more enjoyable it can be. So you can be
Yeah.
too
And
descriptive.
also,
Yeah.
in books, you can just go into a lot more detail on the character's backstory. For example, like let's take the movie I just did for my class, because it's kind of a good example for this. That the main character in my head got his grandmother died, and at her will she left her house to him, to the main character.
Mhm.
And I said, well, that's the explanation I came for it. I got for it in my mind, but then I said, well, how in the hell am I putting this into the movie? Because you can't just pause everything to say, I got this from my grandmother. Once she died, she left the house to me. It doesn't really work.
Yeah.
In a book, though, you can pretty much tell this whenever. Depends on your style, because the character doesn't have to say it. You can say it as as you know, as how do you say? You can tell us in third person, like he liked this house. His grandmother gave it to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
detail it out however you wish, in whatever way you wish, whenever you wish. A movie, you kind of, to get that information across, you have to show stuff within the scene or characters, emotion-wise, like how they're acting and kind of the lines and things they say in the film in order to kind of get that information across in a, not necessarily a subtle way, but in a different way. Because if you just had it, again, like there's the idea of like the exposition character who just says what's going on because someone, because the audience has to know what's going on, even though this person
You know what?
and everyone around them should know what's going on already, right?
Well, hold
You
on.
know, don't
Sorry,
get
HC,
don't get me wrong. Yeah, go ahead.
quick, but back in the day of like plays and stuff, where those scripts were similar to movies or TV shows, they would have sometimes they would have a character, what they would do call an aside, where they would literally speak to the audience to say what was going on as like an actual character, breaking the fourth wall pretty much, and they would literally say in the script aside, and so yeah, like, that's exactly what you're saying.
Like, I love the angry video game nerd and everything, but in his movie, there's a point where the entire point of the scene was exposition. If you saw the movie, you probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, no, I haven't, but I can assume.
Let's say there's this some sort of creature which, according to the movie, created both heaven and hell and God and Satan and stuff, and they just pause the movie out of nowhere to explain what the hell he is, so that when he appears later, it won't come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah, this is the How to Train a Dragon podcast. In case somebody missed it, but
Fanfictions.
But yeah, it was an interesting discussion caused by a How to Train a Dragon fan fiction. So yeah.
Well, I thought it'd be interesting to go into it a bit, since the story is so short. Have a little bit of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have something to talk about.
This is actually kind of a foreshadowing to whenever we'll do an episode about the How to Train a Dragon books. I want to do that at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Woo.
Yeah, because we kind of need to talk about it. This is what started the franchise.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So yeah, to the listeners, keep an eye out for that in about, I don't know, maybe episode 50. Maybe.
All right.
So yeah, how long is this episode so far?
33 minutes.
Well, do you have anything else to say about the story or How to Train Dragon fanfictions in general?
Something to say about this episode. We probably should keep it short after that 2.5 hour long episode we gave them last week.
Well, yeah, the previous episode was a hardcore detailing and analyzing.
I hope everyone enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the one comment I saw about that was that the commenter thought that Hiccup and Astrid's betrothal was stupid, and kudos to him, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you guys have anything else to say?
Nope.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, so this is it for this episode of the Berkcast. We hope you enjoyed our short story and long tangent.
Let me know if you want to see the other story I'm writing that's kind of within the same vein on the Tumblr, and I will post it there. Also, let me know in general what you think of this.
And if you have any ideas for continuation and stuff, we will love to hear that, and you can tell us all about it on the Berk Grapevine forums. We're all there. We're also on Twitter, Berkcast is capital B, capital C, and on Tumblr we are Berkcast Team. So until next time, I was HC.
I'm Rush.
And I've been Wolf.
And we'll talk to you all next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.